6. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll read the district's mission statement. Grounded by our history as one of the oldest publicly supported schools in Wisconsin, Mineral Point School District is the heart of a small community that educates and inspires our students for a bright future in the big world. You take roll call.
Bergstrom. Here. Bush.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Harris. Eisner.
Here.
Johnson. Here. Skelding.
Here. Okay, for recognitions.
Well, for those of you that might not be able to read that, it says 93 years service for retirees. You have Stahl, Mrs. Schmitz, Mr. Schmitz, and Jenny Walleen have all submitted retirement letters to the district, and will be taking 93 years of experience with them in the Mineral Point School District. Several teachers, several of them had some experience elsewhere before coming to Mineral Point, but last year we had 2 people in our very vital people in our support staff that took over 70 years between them when they retired, between Roger Allskill and Marcia Jalen. So just would like to really thank these people for their service to the district, everything they've done for students. Their dedication, professionalism have certainly helped make Mineral Point what it is today and will be long into the future. So a couple of those retirees are here, and just a round of applause to say thank you. Next up is something that was kind of on a whim. A couple of these guys got together and said, hey, we ought to try this. Okay, what do we need to do? Next thing you know, they're competing in the state level. They had to compete online and kind of win their way to the state level. It says our civics team competed at the 3rd annual Wisconsin Civics Game at the state capitol. They were among 62 students, 13 different schools. You have a team comprised of Tyler Nordstrom, Abel Loeb, Griffin Alba, and Bobby Albright. They also heard from the governor, but they competed at the state level. And again, Mr. Cool kind of helped do a little bit of the coaching, what little took place. These guys are very motivated and thought, we really love government. We love history. We love these kinds of things, civics, and decided they wanted to compete and did a fantastic job. So again, Mineral Point being well represented by some fine young men. As you can see, there's a picture of them standing with the governor of the state of Wisconsin. So congratulations to these 4 young men. And then
Matthew Gooden was on the team
Yeah.
as well.
I see him stand back here. He was unable to go. Matthew's got his hands in everything, and we know Matthew's on like a 10 to 12 year graduation plan because we don't want him to leave. So it's okay that he wasn't, able to go this time. He'll be able to go many, many more times and to represent Mineral Point. But congratulations to that group of students. And I did share that with Matthew's mother on the night of graduation as well. So it won't be a surprise to anybody in his family. Mineral Point relay team wins state title. Middle school's track athletes competed in Waupun. First place is a 4x200, Bree Swenson, Ava Ingwell, Lily Hotacker, Hayden Christopher, and an alternate, Faye Schutte. Second place in discus, and third place in discus, maybe a familiar name. Congratulations to Lillian Heisner and Emily Heisner. Shot put, 4th place, Lillian. 4th place, 4x100. 7th place for the 100 hurdles, Nolan Allendorf. 7th place, girls 100, Bree Swenson. So I think with our middle school kids competing, they put our track facility to good use here outside the school district and compete. They they'll travel to Dodgeville and use their track from time to time and basically get a lot of running and get a lot of their workouts done actually around here. But don't compete on a track until it's time to go to a meet. So pretty good showing for our middle school student athletes, and hopefully good things for Dodge Point track and field as the future moves on. So congratulations to our middle school track athletes. This is just the Mineral Point team. We do not co-op for the middle school. Okay. High school state track. We had a team place fourth. The girls 4x8 meter relay team, Ellie Robinson, Reagan Schutte, Julie Thompson, and Annie Robinson. They also individually competed. Ellie was 8th in the 1600 and 8th in the 3200. Annie Robinson was 11th in the 800 meter, in a 14th and 15th place finish. We also had a pretty successful boys program. We have one of our boys track athletes here. Ethan, would you like to say anything about the experience? First of all, tell us what you ran.
I was the third leg of the 4x8 at state, and we had gotten 14th, and I gotta say it was pretty fun. A lot of very hot up there for those 2.5 days, but well, it was great to watch the girls compete as well because they were in a lot more events than we were. But yeah, nice trip overall.
And how did you get there? What did you have to do at sectionals? What place?
We just barely made fourth. Lane Arrett came in with one of the greatest laps he's ever run with a 159.30 split on his 800 meter and just barely beat the anchoring leg of East Troy, I think it was, which got us to qualify from sectionals to state, which was pretty nice.
Another great showing. I know Miss Stahl, you had an opportunity to go. Anything you'd like to share?
It's a great experience. We've never been to state track, and the 1600, which both Ellie and Annie Robinson were in. The defending state champ won again this year, and the pace that she set was just incredible. And honestly, it was hot. We were sitting in the metal bleachers, and I just couldn't believe these athletes and the way they were competing in that heat. The pace of that 1600, it was incredible.
Well, congratulations to both the boys and girls representatives for Dodge Point track and field at state. And last, but certainly not least, Coach, I'll certainly throw it to you. Congratulations, our boys golf with a second place finish at the state tournament this year. Coach Soko.
First off, thanks for having us here. Obviously represented by myself, assistant coach Scott Schmitz, and Mac Busser back there. I promise I'll try to do everything I can to keep Schmitty involved with this deal so we don't lose him completely. From the sounds of it, he's told me that he's going to stick around, so hopefully that reigns true. But no, yeah, we got the silver trophy this year. Not exactly what we wanted when we left to go up there. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's good to see our kids not settle for that. We have 4 kids of the 5 coming back, obviously losing a big piece of the puzzle with Carson Kroll when we got back to the golf course that night. I've never seen that many kids and even adults in tears watching him give his last speech, just knowing that it was his last thing that he was going to do for Mineral Point High School. It pretty much solidified what this community, what this high school, and what everyone in here means to these kids. And being able to at least give them some hardware on the way out is definitely a good deal. I told him when it was just him and I think it took 90 some years for Mineral Point to get to the state tournament 4 times. He was able to go 3 times, so obviously his mark left on our program will definitely never be forgotten, maybe never matched. Hopefully it will be. That's what we're cheering for, but I just think Carson deserves, all the credit in the world for what he's been able to do for these kids. And it was great to hear some of the fathers that night. They just flat out said, I didn't even know my kid had those emotional bones in their bodies. So he definitely was a very good mentor for all these kids. But the trip itself was amazing. Monday morning we got up, we don't tee off till late. I'd like to give the WIA a little piece of my mind on how that happens every year, but I'm guessing it won't change. But we don't tee off till almost 2:00, so it's a long morning for them. So we went over to Whistling Straits. We had one of our members who we're pretty good friends with, and then he's got a buddy that lives right there. We went and had breakfast. The guy that does their locker room stuff took the kids into both locker rooms, the Champions locker room, the locker room that the Europeans had during the Ryder Cup. So they got to see a lot of history. They got to see Tiger Woods' locker rooms, or his locker when he was there, Rory McIlroy. So I think it was a nice deal, especially for the kids that went up that weren't competing, just to see, hey, you want to be participating in this kind of stuff, keep pushing yourselves. And that's why I love that Max here tonight. Just shows his commitment to the golf team and everything. And hopefully we can get him over the hump next year and get him on varsity as well. Because I think obviously the program's going in the right direction. Like I told Vicky that night, I thanked her for putting her trust in me and allowing me to do this. I couldn't believe that it was 14 years already this year that I've been coaching. But I can tell you each year it just seems to be, more enjoyable than the past year. It's a lot of stress, but I just want to thank the school board and everybody involved here. I want to thank the fire department for doing our send off, even though they got called out like 20 minutes before we were going. They still showed up with a couple, so them and the police department rescue squads, they're always there for these kids. And I know that they appreciate everything that they do for the community as well. So can't thank everyone here enough. And hopefully next year we can change the color on that trophy. So
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.
That's it.
Wow. So we'll move to approval of the minutes. We had a regular May meeting. And then we had an operations committee meeting on the 15th that Chair Skelding will review later in the agenda. And then we had our board development retreat meeting with Dr. Nutter. So I'll take a motion to approve all these minutes together or individually.
Make a motion to approve them all together.
I'll second.
Coach Heisman? Any comments, questions? Revisions? Angie, one call question?
Bush,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Skelding.
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Yes. Next, we'll go to communications. We'll start with any communications received by the board. Joni, you want to start?
I will start, but I don't believe I've had any communications over the last month.
I had one community member reach out, just expressing a few concerns about hiring process, especially for some of the higher level
thank you.
positions. So I told them we would make sure that those concerns were addressed when we kind of get into the details during closed session, but that was all I got.
Yeah, a couple conversations on the hiring process. Couple emails on the more about the candidates and some opinions there. And then just had a good conversation actually with a citizen at a graduation party about this graduating senior class and how it's grown and just different things the district has done. And then the taxpayers and their positive votes in what has led to the increase in this class size and then ending up at 67. So that was a good conversation to have, because sometimes we don't follow the track all the time because we're in the present. So
Anything specific you felt like that the district did or that taxpayers supported that led to, you mean like more kids open enrolling
Like there
in that
was-
class? Or?
yeah, conversations I think about, this was one of the classes that led to 3 classes per, I don't know what their numbers were at that point, but there's some discussion about as they were going through the elementary school, having a 3rd teacher, and then the multiple past referendums that allow for the additional programs. And then this being one of the classes that seemed to reach into the vocational programs and stuff. And on that note, the other piece I had was not necessarily a citizen communication, but I got the Cornerstone magazine from the CISA 3, and there was a fantastic article with pictures in there about the day that the youth apprenticeship program went up. So that was nice to see, and I think that goes to everybody, right?
Everybody in CISA 3 gets that, yep.
So if it's sitting on your chair somewhere, check it out.
Cool. Okay, we'll go to citizen communication. Thank you, David, you sign up to it. Anyone in the room want to say anything? Any public comment? Anyone online, you can use the raise hand icon. We'll call on you and give you your 3 minutes. Going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you. Next, we'll go to items for information and discussion. First is the WASB Business Honor Roll nominations. Anything, any comments?
It is that time of year for the school board to consider nominating local area businesses to the WASB Business Honor Roll. Joelle did push out a link on the webpage that have all the recipients in the past. The 22 recipients were the Democrat Tribune and Chronicle, the Mineral Point Kiwanis, and the Mineral Point Library. They were the 3 recipients last year. And she has past recipients back through 2015. You can choose to not nominate anybody, or you can choose to nominate up to 4 businesses. And it's varied. Some years the board has nominated 1, some years they've nominated 4. So there is a wide variety. And once you've nominated somebody, you should not nominate them again. So this would be something to kind of think about and bring forward. We would make it an action item at the July board meeting so that we can get Mineral Point's information off to WASB by the August deadline.
Okay, so just something to start considering. Anyone has any nominations or suggestions now, you can toss it out for us to share. Mitch, do you have any at the top of mind, or?
Well, I was just the comment I'd like to make is that we've done like Pointer Pantry, so it can be a nonprofit. So when you think of business, it does not have to be for-profit business. And are there companies, and we've kind of extended out to Greater Mineral Point. We've had businesses in other communities that we have nominated because of the level of support they have provided to the district in some capacity. So I think, you don't necessarily have to think of Mineral Point proper, but there are plenty of people that give back to the school district and help students in a variety of ways. So I guess don't just limit your thinking. I know we created a list last year with some potential people to kind of think about. I will get that list and send that out to board members as some just things for you to consider.
Perhaps it's included in that list, but we have had an uptick in students participating in vocational opportunities. I would just ask that we reflect on, is there anybody in that space who's supporting our students in a way that's beyond the norm?
That's a great point. I think that's a very great point, especially, based on what Andy just shared out of the Cornerstone. And we've had students recognized at graduation, at senior awards night, through youth apprenticeship and Southwest Tech and things. So I think that's a great point to consider businesses that have been able to take on some of our students and provide some of those opportunities.
I was gonna say the same thing. If there's a few employers that really heavily involved with the youth apprenticeship program, that would be great.
The other thought I had is if there's anybody you could let us know that maybe donated services or anything for the building project now that it's complete, that you may want to recognize as well.
Sure.
We just need to reflect on to make a final decision at the July meeting. Okay, next is Operations Committee report. I'm gonna pull up the minutes from the 5:15 meeting reference.
Those I can just read off the minutes I have.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, we got together May 15th. We had about 6 or 7 different agenda items. First one is Tricia Sporley came in and talked to us, expressed her frustrations, concerns about the drainage issue at the north entrance. So the action from that was, first there was some discussion around, does the school own any of the land on either side of the driveway? And the consensus is that we probably did. I think Dave was going to look into that.
Yep.
That's confirmed we own.
Yep.
So many feet.
Correct. On both sides of there. There was an issue on the east side of the driveway where water was not necessarily being routed to culvert. That has been remedied. Dave DeVoe went out and was able to do some work and in essence kind of build up a trench that directs water there. And then the water running off the parking lot, I was able to speak with Chase Ivy. He's looked at the area. He has a proposal. I need to meet with Tricia Spurley. There was a question on whether a couple of trees might be able to be taken out, which would then aid in kind of cleaning it up and potentially getting a solution in there. And if not, Ivy's can work around that, but I just need that last communication. And that would be something that would be coming back for an operations committee meeting. It's a Fund 46 project.
Once we get some actual rain, we can see if the problem's been solved.
More than 1/100 of an inch or something. Yes.
Cool. We quickly went through the Skilding school building and grounds tracker. In short, items are closing, but new ones are being added. But overall progress is being made. I think the only item we talked about was the water issue in the back of the elementary that Fund 49 was to cover. And I think Tim's action was to follow up by the end of May. You get back to you.
I have not heard from him. I have reached out, but he is a pretty busy contractor as well. So I'm not surprised by that. And I don't feel that he's ignoring us. It's just how busy he is. It's going to be one of those where I think if he finished a project on a Thursday, he would be able to come in and do our project on a Friday and be done with it basically in a day's time or less. So I think he's just looking at those kinds of things, but I will certainly follow up with him again.
Then we talked about the elementary school track. Mitch had reached out to Iverson to see if they would be open to paving that based on workload and just the size of the job. It was too small for them. So there was another option for a company called Farmland. I reached out to them. They said they were open to potentially bidding out the job, and they ever reach out to you?
No, but I've got a phone number, so I will follow up with him as well.
And next item was the school after school program. Spent quite a bit of time on that, especially about the survey results. Lots of great positive feedback and interest in the program. Roughly, we would need about 40 kids to break even. So next step is Christy was going to work with the team to kind of flesh out what that program would look like and then bring it to the board for the July board meeting.
And the community foundation did support that, a grant in the tune of $15,000 to help support that after school program.
So I feel like that's a really great step in the right direction if we're able to, and we'll talk more about it next month. But is that moving us towards a more comprehensive childcare plan, or are we saying we're going to take a baby step and look at some wraparound care first or an after school program first, and then discuss other? Okay.
That's
My takeaway was that we were focusing on after school care, but open to potentially a little bit of before school care if it worked out with the staffing and logistics and space and everything for this school year. But you're referring to moving towards like an all-day daycare kind of?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, when we've had some citizen comments in the past, that the call out was anything you can do to support us. The
Yeah.
ultimate goal was to provide, or what I was hearing is the ultimate goal was to provide a full childcare service. And I'm not saying that we should be in that business. We've got our hands full with what we do. But I was just wondering, is your vision as an operations committee that this is a step towards that? Or is this kind of like, this is where we think we fit in supporting childcare in our community?
I guess speaking for the committee, I would say, I think where we fit is an after school and potentially before school
Okay.
program.
I support that approach. I just was curious.
I think once we kind of all day thing would bring in licenses and that, right?
Yeah, there would be we would have to make a lot more consideration if that was the case. So I think the initial plan is a great place to start. And then I would assume that we would look at it year to year based on our community needs and the families that are in our district. Make changes accordingly if needed, so.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if the school district were to take on an all-day daycare, we'd have to go to referendum for more space. You know, it'd have to be a whole nother project. So I think we're focusing on school-age children.
Very good.
Yeah. But to that point, I mean, you know, we determined that it was maybe 40 kids to break even, and the survey showed interest of over 100 kids. So we're anticipating there to be enough demand to make the program work financially.
We ran out of time to review Fund 46, so we're gonna have another meeting June 29th, it looks like, to talk some more of that. Talk through a school facilities tour for the board. We were looking at the week of August 28th. When teachers start to come back, and we have that, you know, all day or partial day, and meet and greet with the teachers. I know, Miss, you were gonna look at that week for options. Any ideas yet or no?
Right now, any night that week would work in my schedule, but it works for all the rest of you.
One of those is the back to school.
I think the 29th. I think it's Tuesday, the 29th.
Yep.
Do we come up with some options at the next ops meeting and bring that in July to the
Yeah.
board?
Mhm.
And then lastly, we talked about the elementary parking lot. Mitch, you were gonna follow up with Mr. Renwick to see what kind of impact changing the time classes depart. And all at the same time to see if that had any impact on the traffic and congestion.
Mr. Renwick, was there any noticeable difference in that south parking lot?
I did not notice any difference.
Kids are no more than off playground for recess.
Do you guys feel like it's like a lack of understanding of the process to pick up and drop off kids?
It takes one person it takes one person to leave their car from the side curb, get out, wait for their kids for 5 minutes, and then walk back when they're supposed to. Be in the car, leave, once, they've got their kids, but they can't go forward. But when I am out there, when I'm available, I will go out and keep it going.
That seemed to make the most impact when you're out there, kind of
Somebody,
being a coordinator.
yeah.
I don't know that it makes a difference when I'm up there, but
No, I mean, it is, yeah, it's just, get some of the big F-150s in there too, and it makes it tough to maneuver and, yeah, there's just a lot of people that come in more than maybe they anticipated when they designed it. I imagine they said, we've got this many kids, and a typical school, that means, get this many pickups, and, but, every school's different.
I guess my kids are all grown, but from a parent perspective, if I had a small child, I'm not sure I'd want them to walk through the cars that are being picked up to the center, so then everybody is getting out of their cars to go get their child, so the child's not walking alone. And it's not a quick pick, it's not a quick grab and go, it's a couple of minutes and.
And this is not a new problem. That the pulling in at 2:30 to 2:40 and parking and congregating has been a long-standing practice. Doesn't matter what the design of the parking lot has been, because I can speak to prior design, and it wasn't any different with people continuing to park in spots that weren't designated parking spots, but same thing, so.
The order of new sign, I believe Jane has, that will say that we used to have before construction that do not come in before 3 o'clock. Then we can enforce that. Also, it's better than what it was.
I think it's just going to be a continued education process.
Right.
And it's not terrible. I mean, it's like 5 minutes of conduct.
And I think the times that I was there too, to both points, you're weighing, if you just stayed at your car, your child could get to your car and you could move on and you're out of the congestion. But yet you have younger children, and today it's mom, tomorrow it's dad, Wednesday it's grandpa, so it might be somebody different with that pickup, and having the students try to walk through the traffic too is going to cause an issue as well.
We don't allow the kids to leave unless they're on the sidewalk, and it's on the sidewalk. They can walk the sidewalk, but if they're parked in the middle, they have to get out and come get their child at a designated zone, so it is.
So when my oldest was in this building and my younger ones were still in the elementary, I would have my younger ones ride the shuttle bus up to the high school because either way I was going to be late picking somebody up, right? And so that's what worked for our family. But could that be instituted as a best practice, that if you don't have a student under third grade, so students ride the shuttle bus to the high school where there seems to be a little bit better parking and better flow? Or are we just shifting the problem then from one hand to the other?
This year, like there were more shuttle riders than I remember this year than other years.
I think this year we used 2 buses for that.
I mean, you'd almost be getting into trouble if you have enough buses to shuttle kids up here.
Okay.
There's a lot.
So I'd say, I think you did have a second shuttle mid-year.
The first one was so full.
Okay.
It was a seat availability, so I worked with the bus barn and they were able to have a second bus be part of that shuttle.
The buses are all parked at the elementary and then come to the high school anyway, right? So it shouldn't cost us more, whether the bus is coming up here with 5 students on it or with 35 students on it.
Yeah, it was not a cost.
Okay, it was just a coordination.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, follow up's meeting, we can maybe lay out some improvements for the coming year that could potentially help
Maybe
the
like
issue.
outside experts to help us with that, or?
I'm not sure. I mean, I would just be interested in hearing, thoughts you guys come up with in terms of signage and directing one-way flow and one-way entrance, and maybe having a staffer there every day after school to control traffic and not just rely on you, Matt, to be there every time. I don't know. I don't know if other things can happen, but maybe we can talk about that in committee to have a plan for the start of the school year.
All right, that's it.
Thank you. So, good segue to the building reports from the principals. Who do you pick to start?
We'll go with the retiree,
And
soon to be retiree.
this is your last meeting officially? Hey, I'm nice for this moment.
Look at the gift.
Our end of the year star reading and math report. So when you look at this, obviously, did you want one, Mr. Wainwright? Sure. We'd love to have all of our students moving over to the green. But what I did like about this report is we were starting to get more of our students coming off of the red and the yellow to move into at least on watch. Some of our grade levels ended up going down a little bit in the spring. 8th graders, they seem to keep their level up or their percentage up. But I do think sometimes when we get to our spring testing, we were just coming off the forward exam and we jumped right into our star reading and math tests so we could get them done by the end of the school year. I thought we made some pretty good progress throughout the school year, and it will be interesting to see where we're at when the forward scores come out in the fall, because that one's still going to be on me.
You are.
No, that test is still on me. We took it this spring and the scores won't come out until the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last page just reviews some of the different things that, regarding reading, our book club numbers, average, and then the words read through accelerated reader. They do think, if you look at some of our scores on here, I do think it was to our advantage to move our RTI and interventions to the mornings. I think that was definitely a good move for us. And I thought our eighth graders improved throughout the year. Especially, you know, in the spring and math. Our math scores were very good.
Just to clarify, one student in the middle school read 4 million words this school year.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it goes from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year.
An avid reader.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Do kids get any incentive for reading one or more words? Like extra credit or?
Well, accelerated reader is part of the reading grade.
Right.
Yeah.
Is the bare minimum, I'm sure it's not 1 million words, but
No.
something smaller than that.
Smaller than that. They have to read so many books and then take an accelerated reader.
Right.
test.
So their goal is set based on their individual, it's
Okay.
customized to each student. So I might have 2 kids in 6th grade and one of them's score might be, you know, or their AR goal might be 20 points higher than the other because they're different strengths academically.
Right, and that might, if I'm not mistaken, that might be based off of that first STAR reading test.
It's adjusted each quarter based upon the STAR. So their first quarter goal might be different than their third quarter goal because when we retake STAR, we readjust.
And usually at your awards ceremony, you recognize
Yes.
these, right? Mrs.
Yes.
McCoy usually recognizes
Yeah.
these students as well.
And the students who were not in intervention, one of the things that we did this year is there were no RTI study halls. Everybody had a reading group. So like I had 8th graders here in the library and every day we would read books. And even though they didn't want to most of the time, but, and then if you were in obviously reading intervention, then you were with our reading teachers, depending upon if you were urgent or in the yellow in intervention. But the rest of the students, they had reading study halls. You could not do homework, it was all reading.
Anything specific from this data that, and your experience from this year that you'd like to see improve or some changes you'd like to see for the start of next year? Like you mentioned, RTI to the morning would be a kind of a change, but anything else?
I think that was a good move, and I think it helped to have the other groups reading, because some of our students who would be in either in one of the interventions would always look at it, wow, they get to have a study hall and they don't have to read. So that helped keep their focus on the intervention groups too. I would not change any of that. I wish that we could have had room for a 7th grade math strats. We have 8th grade math strats. I wish we had the room to have 7th grade math strats. Because I think it really helped our 8th grade group. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry, that's 7th grade. 7th grade math strats. I wish we could have an 8th grade math strats, have 2 levels of math strats.
So when you say we don't have the room, like we don't have the room in the schedule, or we don't have the physical space?
In the schedule
Okay.
for the teacher.
Okay, so it is a, hours and a teacher constraint.
Yeah.
Okay.
That stands for strategies.
Yes,
So, and it's for the struggling kids
right.
for the most part, right?
We have sixth grade math strategies and seventh grade math.
That's great. Okay.
Does someone who takes seventh grade math strategies then move into the, baseline eighth grade math, or do they then do a seventh grade? Do they do sixth grade strat, seventh grade strat, and then go streamline eighth grade, or do they go seventh grade?
Well,
Yeah.
so sometimes if they're in math strats, they could also be in.
Oh, it's a
In-
supporting curriculum.
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, they're in the regular.
Response to intervention. Yeah, they're in the regular math curriculum, but
And then
then
add
they
it
go
to
into
the,
that period for
Okay.
extra help for math straps.
And we don't have that because we don't have a teacher.
Well, we have one person teaching seventh and eighth grade math. So with her schedule, it would be hard to incorporate another hour for eighth graders.
We have a math interventionist. Yeah, we have a reading.
We
interventionist.
do have reading interventionists, yes.
do we have, and is that strats course during the RTI time? Or is it is separate?
Because with eighth grade, Mrs. Cabot tries to have an eighth grade intervention group
Mhm.
during that period, and then the
During
seventh,
RTI.
right, during RTI. Then the math strats is for seventh graders.
Okay. So is there a resource at the high school level that could come down and teach?
I know, I mean, our math teachers, their schedules are
The book?
booked. Yeah, and that's why we have some of our advanced math students in high school taking, college level or online advanced courses.
So if I heard you right, Mrs. Cabot is kind of using RTI for kind of a informal math strats for some of those eighth grade students that need it?
Well,
Or is it
You
more
can-
one-on-one or?
it's more of a small group intervention.
How many days a week is she doing that?
He has that 5 days a week.
She does?
Yes. Yep. And math strats for seventh grade is 5 days a week.
Okay,
But if you really want to be effective, you have to keep those groups small. So you're not necessarily always getting all the kids in there that need that extra help. Just because we don't have the staff to do it. It's the same in some ways with reading too.
Some kids don't have study halls already. If they need a strats course, are we, taking them out of electives or? Okay.
Yes.
It's hard to.
what about like, volunteer tutors? To give an hour a day for a small group of kids that need some math intervention? Or maybe to help co-teach with Mrs. Cabot. I won't use the co-teach, but kind of like
Well,
assist.
we have somebody that does co-teach with Mrs. Cabot already.
Okay,
But, we've tried to use high school students in the past
okay.
as some math tutors, but then again, sometimes their schedules don't match up with our middle school students.
The amount of time we coordinate volunteers and having.
And I mean,
Yeah.
and with the new math, you really have to make sure that,
You're up to speed.
yes,
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but I mean, I don't want to create a bigger
No.
problem, but I mean, if there's like,
And
adults
it's-
in the community say, hey, I want to help these kids learn math. How can I help? I mean, can it be after school or
Well-
can the parents set it up one-on-one or?
We did have a college student come in during, homework club and help students
Okay,
tutor in different subjects, and math was definitely one of them. Jake, did that, Angie's son did that. Well, that was helpful too. But I mean, looking at our star scores, I think our the staff that we have been doing a very good job. So
You're a reading strategy.
it's in sixth grade. But then seventh and eighth grade, they will have the reading intervention. Yeah.
Vicky, is homework club for all middle schoolers or?
Yes, all middle school students can attend if they want to.
I come back to Joni's point. If a student doesn't have a study hall, they're being pulled from somewhere else. So not only is it sometimes a teacher issue, we don't have the teacher availability. Students don't necessarily have the availability in their schedules that would set up nicely for that intervention block on a regular basis either.
So we're talking a lot about math here, but statistically speaking, we're fine in math. It's reading where if we need extra intervention or if we're gonna find a way to put additional support somewhere, the numbers say it needs to be in the reading space. I mean, not that we did bad.
Really looking at this, you did a pretty fantastic job in reading too, especially with the graphs themselves are a little misleading because of the numbers on the left. I mean, looking at some of the lower performing scores and the difference from start to finish. And I mean, there's a 100-point difference from the first graph to the second on where the scores start. So I think we're definitely doing a good job, and it's I think it's a battle that a lot of schools face about getting those students in the middle, as we have extra resources for the students at the low end, but getting the on watch to the at or above, and what can we do to get to those students is the hard part.
And I think our staff did a great job. And then we also had one of our staff members who would work with like 2 to 3 students and to no more than 3 students. So that was some really intense intervention for our urgent interventions.
Wendy's point earlier is that I'm actually understanding this graph. So the line, that little white line in the middle is actually like a nationally normed scale, right? So then it's moving, it's always moving all year. So like the kids who will start behind are trying to catch up.
Right. And what we have a tendency to look at too is where we're at in the red and yellow. I mean, if we can move more students over to the blue and on watch, then we know we're definitely having some success there. Because I mean, you'll have students that'll come in the summer and just test incredible on reading, like the first STAR test. And then after that, they might drop a little bit, but they continue to have pretty good scores, stronger readers.
I don't think this discussion is about why your teacher's doing such a bad job. I don't think that's where we're going.
No.
I think the question is, just end of year processing, like how can any changes we can do to make it, to help them even more next year. And more importantly for you, this is your chance to say, walk out the door and say, hey, if money was no object, I think the middle school needs this, and this.
If money was no object,
I'd love to hear it.
we need another math teacher, which could be
6 through 8 math teacher, or
even 7 through 12. That could teach a couple middle school courses and help with high school.
okay.
Or 6-12. And then a reading interventionist for this building.
Middle school, high school.
Have you ever had that position?
Not, as long as I've been principal, not in the middle school, high school. There's one in the elementary school. Those would be 2 areas that I think would be beneficial. Yes, would I like it just for 6 through 8? Yes, but I think there's also a need at the high school.
So we currently have 1 reading interventionist that's full-time in the middle school. Is that right?
We
or
don't
no?
know. We don't have a full-time reading interventionist.
Okay.
We have a teacher that comes up from the elementary and does some reading intervention for a few hours a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's Mrs. McGraw.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
2 hours a day.
Yep.
Okay. There's no extra reading help at the high school level, my understanding.
No, no. And no extra math help at the high school level either.
They do have 2 different strats classes that they offer.
Both in math?
Yes.
Okay.
In English stress.
Is an English stretch? Okay, sorry.
Great English stress.
Okay.
That's around, maybe some ACT support, right, for kids who might,
So
or is it?
10th grade is a heavily literature-based course.
Okay,
So they do small group, most of the reading together in small groups to talk through it and pick up key details and summarize and discuss the text as a group instead of students reading on their own. And for the English 10. And I know that Ms. Brunson and Mr. Austin would love to get an English 9 strategies course, but yeah. And then the math one is a lot of pre-teaching or reteaching. So it's kind of a double dose of what they did in class. They'll either pre-teach a lot of the vocabulary and then they'll reteach in small groups. It's usually 8 to 10 students in the section for the strategies course.
How many grade levels is that for?
Algebra strats and geometry strats.
Keep going. Nikki. Is your change?
Those are the.
No repercussions.
Two main ones right there.
Okay.
Because I just see, even though Ms. Cabot has somebody co-teaching, I think we could definitely use another math teacher. Definitely at middle school, but also could help at the high school level, and same with either a reading specialist or a reading interventionist.
thank you for sharing that. So often, especially with budget being what they are, we're talking about where can we slice and where can we squeeze? And I don't think we step back very often and say, if we had the money, where would be the best places to put it? This is a good conversation. Thank you.
And I'll take you back to, you're done, right, Ms. Dahl? I'll take you back to something that Mr. Renwick had said too, some of this, when you're talking about response to intervention, RTI kinds of things, you're thinking, is my curriculum good? Well, 80% of my students should be successful if it's a solid curriculum. If you look at the numbers at the spring testing, you're looking at 80, 74%, 74% in reading for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And 74% could be one kid answering one question differently. And the next thing you know, you've got those 2 grades at 80%. If you look at the math, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you're looking at over 80% of the students are where you'd want them to be.
Well, that helps me, because so you're saying on watch is actually at grade level.
It could be either way. I mean, on watch is, again, like I said, there could be 1 or 2 test questions that they get right that pushes them to the at or above, or it could be a couple more questions that might take them the opposite direction. But the size of the bar also kind of gives you an idea of how close to that cut line, that cut score are they.
I watch is the 40th percentile range. Generally 40th percentile and above is considered.
Well, I guess I would concur that the middle school staff is doing a fantastic job based on these numbers.
They definitely, not that they haven't worked hard in the past, but it was definitely an emphasis with the staff this year. And they worked hard at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Come back and visit us.
I'll come back and do citizens comment.
No way to do.
Minutes. I got them. They have one of them.
She's coming back as a full-time substitute.
Ooh,
Mr. Renwick.
Yes.
Every week.
Do surrounding schools have like a middle school, high school reading interventionist, or is the thought that schools make the investment in reading curriculum in elementary school and hopefully that sets them up for success and
There's some of both.
okay.
There's some, if our curriculum is, if we're teaching our curriculum to fidelity, our students will get what they need to get. Others do have interventionists or try to put in time throughout the day to be able to work with struggling readers or mathematicians or whatever, but I will never say it's a luxury. It was certainly an advantage for us, having some of those positions. It creates an advantage for our students.
Hello, I just updated we've seen this graph before, these tables before, and we have our spring results in. One thing I did was I took off the proficiency plus met individual goals. Just because now we have 2 years of data, just gonna focus on that. We did achieve more kids than what the proficiency ratings list here achieved individual goals. That's good. But for reading last year at this time, we had 60% of our kids reading proficiently according to either STARS at grades 3-5 or DIVLs at K2. This year we have 64%. That's an increase of 4%. If you break it out by grade level, K2 is at 76% compared to 66%. So that's an increase of 10%. That's really good. 3-5 went down 2%. And I would just say was one class that perennially struggles with any kind of standardized assessment, especially at the end of the year. It actually correlated with math too. So in fact, I talked to one of those kids and they're not motivated and just put ABC, ABC, ABC. And like, you can't do that. You know, you have to take it seriously. And, but it is what it is. So, the overall 4% gain compared to last year. Bearing in mind, we have one new set of kids coming in, we lose one set of kids going out. So take it for what you want, but an increase is good. Just reading some of the teachers' reflections at the end of the year, at like K2, for example, they really felt like PLC has started to come together more with the new reading resource benchmark. They had a lot of conversations about how to implement it. And at the same time, they talked a lot about the assessments that would help them determine if they were implementing it well, how the kids were doing, if they were struggling. And so they made a lot of adjustments together. So I saw a lot of good teamwork just based on the reflections they showed me. And this is our first year too, so it's going to get easier. We're going to get through more of that resource. That's good. Math-wise, we 74% kids were proficient compared to last year, 76%. So not a big change, and that's still pretty high. That's pretty close to that 80% goal that you kind of want for core curriculum. So that's good. Any questions on the numbers?
See the fall this year where numbers were drastically higher.
Yeah.
Any ideas behind that?
Longer summer? Seriously, I don't know. No, and it didn't grow, as much.
Right.
So that's I think Rachel brought up a good point. Every time they test, the stakes get a little higher. The complexity gets a little higher. It's a little more difficult. So, so that from winter to spring and reading for 3-5 went from 57 to 52. It's not like they got less smarter. It was just the test got a little bit harder, and it's springtime, and it's 75 degrees out and sunny, and who knows? And that's just me putting together all 3 grade levels too.
Is it normal to see a much faster growth in that K2 space than it is in the 3-5? Just in 21-22, that space grew 28% over the year. The following year, 32%. The other grades are at single digits. So I just wondered if maybe it's like where they're at in their learning curve.
If you walk into a first grade classroom in October, you walk in there in February, it's like they're different kids just because now they're reading chapter books and some of them, it's just the growth is enormous. Yeah. So we're able to tease out too, at that level too. It's very concrete, like when they're starting to learn their blends and their sounds and word parts and to, you can see it, that change over time. Whereas 3-5, it's more up here, they're reading independently. So now you're trying to tease out what's going on inside your head, not doing as much oral reading, doing much more about comprehension. It's always about comprehension, but it becomes more about engagement too. And we get these kids to be readers, not just reading. So this is, we did some other assessments with the kids this year. We did some exit interviews with about 100 or so 4th and 5th graders. And one of the positive things we saw with reading was we've been doing a book budget project the last 2 years with Nikki. And she's had the kids, 4th and 5th graders can sign up to audit the school library. So they examine all the books we have available. Talk to all the kids going around the school with their iPads and surveying their peers, finding out what books they want, what books they don't want, what books they just better representation of in the catalog itself. So that's the second page here. This was just one activity they did was all the types of books they wanted, and they used an interactive voting tool, online tool, the thumbs up, thumbs down. They can see the number one book because number one type of book, they want brand new books. So they felt like a lot of the books were like worn and torn, like the Harry Potter series or Dog Man. They get read 100 times, they start to break down. So they just we just need to replace these books and make them look nice. Graphic novels are huge. Book characters, stuffed animals. So they like the stuffed animals in the bookcases, and then they read to them. Technology books are big right now, virtual reality, augmented reality, scary books. So the kids that ordered these books through grant money that we found through a nonprofit. So one positive result is since 2020-21, the number of books that have been circulated through the library, number of times books have been checked out went from 16,232 in 2021 to 22,356. That's an increase of 38% circulation rate, which is outstanding. And those things don't always show up right away. It's not like you bake a cake, it's like, oh, the cake is done, we've got a reader. It takes time. So we're hearing about a kid in 6th grade this year who was like, oh, this kid is reading now. And this was that kid that 5th grade teacher spent the whole year working with him, finding that book series that he would like, and just couldn't find it. But just all that effort is paying off. So I think just the point to be made here is not just a 5th grade reading program, 3rd grade reading program. We see it as a 4K5 reading program. And we're just trying to find different ways to assess that beyond just a snapshot in the springtime. Overall, I'm happy with the results and I did interview a lot of the kids in those exit interviews. 4 things stood out to me, and Mickey was a part of that too. Kids need more time to read, and the teachers do a pretty good job of giving them time, but there's so much stuff, so many standards to cover, and how do we create more time? They want less distractions when they read too, and more comfortable furniture. So like nice seating and different types of seating to sit on when they can read. Kids are not always confident about picking a new book. So, feedback here is more opportunities for book talks and like self-directed book clubs instead of the teachers always saying, we're going to read this series. You can pick within this series. Kids can form their own book clubs. The third thing was they really want their teachers to confer with them, like give them word attack strategies in context of what they're reading, not more phonics lessons isolated, but while I'm reading, come help me. And then just feedback about how to be a better reader. This was the last finding was really interesting. The kids really pay attention to what adults are doing as readers, not just at school. And the primary influence that I saw was at home. If a kid says, I don't really read much, we would then ask, well, what's reading like at home? Oh, we don't have a lot of books. they're not newspapers or anything. Whereas if one kid said, oh, I'm really into poetry, you know, the next question would be, a parent into poetry? Yep. I mean, it was just uncanny. That quote, kids will never really do what we say, but they never fail to act like we act. So how do we do that? I think just first acknowledging this isn't just a school, you know, issue is, you know, an issue, but it's not a school initiative. It's a homeschool initiative. So, these kind of things like these book club projects are great. It really builds enthusiasm. The kids are going home excited. They were at the new independent bookstore here in town. One kid was saying, I'm going to take my mom later to that new bookstore to get that book online. I didn't have enough money. So doing these homeschool community partnerships is be really powerful and, you know, influence not just the kid, but, you know, the people around them too.
Do the teachers track any of their classroom libraries, like books coming out of their classroom libraries too, that would maybe add to that number of books in circulation?
That'll be a good data point, I think. Yeah. We did track by grade, by class, how many books they checked out of the school library.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we've learned is the better the school library gets, less books you'll need in your classroom library, because you go there. That would be a very good data point. I'm also going to encourage the faculty to use the same engagement surveys that we used in the book budget project in their classroom. Because you can learn a lot from kids' engagement. If I'm not confident about picking my next book, then as an instructor, it tells me I got to do more book talks and book blurbs in class time. So that engagement, instruction, connection, is important. But yeah, that'd be a good data point.
That's one more question.
Yeah.
What's the bridge underneath the 3K, 5? Oh, it's the average of K2 and 3-5.
Yeah. So the bottom number is the you know, that percentage. So. Well, no, it's funny because I think of the fifth grade graduation, I had said it grew by 27%, but then I was driving home from Weston. I don't know why I think of it in the car, but no, I divided the wrong number. Well, it's actually 38%, which is a good math error. But yeah, that's a promising result.
That you attributed this 52% of the 3-5 reading score to maybe one class that doesn't seem to put any effort into the testing. If you took that grade out, is there a significant bump in the overall scores?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's this one class. It's just perennially not done well on assessments like this. Although if you talk to them, like I know one kid right off the top of my head who was in a classroom talking to him, and he's reading this book about baseball, and his knowledge about baseball is extensive. And he knew that Aaron Judge, who's a current baseball player for the Yankees, would not be in this book about legends of baseball because it only goes up to 1990. I mean, he knew that, you know, deep knowledge about baseball. So if I gave him a test that was all about baseball, he would score very well on an assessment like this, but the STAR assessment does not similar to his background knowledge. So it's often luck of the draw in terms of background knowledge, what kind of text you might get at these assessments too. Yeah, I guess to your point, yes, it would increase that score. Yeah.
Is that why you think the 2 through 5 math scores are so much better? Is because it's less contextual? Or
yeah, that could be part of it. Yeah.
Because I feel like if the kids didn't care about the tests, whether it's math or reading, the scores would be equally
right. And I shouldn't say they don't care about it.
low.
I think sometimes kids know they're not going to do terribly well on it, or they're just distracted. And you get longer passages. You get the first 3 questions right. STAR will give you a longer passage. Oh, no. getting punished. The kid might be thinking, I do better on this testing.
Mm.
I get more complex text. So I think the math assessment for STAR is actually just a better assessment because it's just more technical.
Maybe shorter attention span, you think?
Yep. You get numbers. You don't get,
Right.
have to read this whole passage and then try to figure out what the right answer is.
Mhm.
No, in math, there always is a right answer. Reading, there's some nuance. So there's a variety of reasons. And I would say too, we've had a core resource in math for 9 years now. We're just getting back to a core resource. This is our first year. So, I mean, looking at these K2 results, I expect these numbers are going to start to go up and up and up. As long as we stay true to the resource, yes, but also to continuing to build his capacity as readers, enjoying reading, identifying as readers.
Do you think that, are we seeing any results yet from the new curriculum, or is it just too soon?
No, we saw there was some worry at the primary level that there wasn't enough foundational reading skill like phonics instruction, but just teasing this out, that's just, that's not accurate. Kids did very well, and we're seeing that more. Teachers were saying, I just see the kids having more skills in terms of breaking words down and solving them. So, and that's something that older kids were saying too. And the exit interviews was, if I came to a hard word, I wasn't sure how to make sense of it or how to code it in context. So that was something I communicated with, and the feedback to teachers. End of the year reflections was just don't necessarily need more phonics or more of this or that. The kids just need more time to try and apply it. As we become more comfortable with the resource, we'll free up hopefully more time for teachers to, because they want to get in there. The teachers want to do that, but there's just a lot for the first year. So I think they'll find more time. We just ordered a couple of resources conferring with the kids, which is basically coaching kids in reading, one-on-one or small group. We ordered some resources for them.
And
Go ahead.
I think it's a testament to the staff and the reading program as well, that we didn't get necessarily implementation drop.
Right.
That we had some concern about, that it was going to take a year for the teachers to figure out how to teach it before the students figured out how to learn it. And, that our numbers are where they were or better with new curriculum. So if we get the year 2 jump that generally takes off from the implementation drop, then our numbers are going to be fantastic. So
How are you all feeling after this first year with the new reading program?
When I talked to teachers, they were like, I wasn't sure about this thing, and it's just not. It's different because they're not expected to read from script. They're not expected to teach ABC. They're expected to teach the student. Here's this resource. A lot of just shifting of gears of how we've taught reading in the past. So I think they're feeling more confident by the end of the year. And they were also glad to be done. And so I have time to take a break. There's a lot. Yeah, I commend all the teachers for doing that. One other promising thing I saw too was the integration with some of the outside services, interventions in special education and RTI and the core resource. The teachers were able, because we have a core resource now, specialists can kind of anticipate what kind of vocabulary is coming up, what kind of types of texts are coming up, and they can front load those kids with scaffolding and doing some acceleration. And we saw some good results there too. That's another focus for next year, is how can we continue to work coherently with a truly 4K5 program.
Any grades really stand out from the new curriculum?
Kindergarten numbers are really high compared to last year.
What about fourth grade? How was fourth?
No, I think overall it was, all the kids were challenged. You didn't always see in the past, you know, as you get older in the grades, you want to spend a lot of time in chapter books. You don't always spend a lot of time in like complex, challenging nonfiction informational texts, you know, with higher vocabulary levels. And so, you know, I remember watching your daughter with a couple of other kids, and they were trying to figure out a word. I don't remember the word, but it was in a poem. And they were really having a tough time trying to solve the context clues. And they knew what the word, they could pronounce it, but they couldn't determine the meanings. We were talking about strategies they could use. So I just saw, you know, all the kids were challenged.
Anything else, Mr. Herbert?
Well, thanks again for all your support and getting these resources in.
Thank you for the
schools.
update.
But also
Thank
have
you.
boxes and boxes still of classroom library books that we're trying to innovate in the school to the classroom library. So that's, you know, your support's been very appreciated.
Mr. Austin is out of the state on a family vacation, so he'll share data at the July board meeting from the high school academic data.
Hold them to it. Parking lot, right?
We're kind of brutal about it.
Okay. So that takes us to budget comparison.
So in your board packet, you have the May budget from 22. And we had expended 80.59% of the budget at the end of May. A year ago, this year, we're at 80.90%. So almost dead on the amount of percent of the budget expended throughout the year. We will have a preliminary audit on the 28th of June, and then the full audit will be in July, where we'll have more information for you at that point in time.
Do you anticipate that we will have funds available to move to Fund 47?
46.
46?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said like $6. Okay.
I'll tell you what, if it's $6, I'd still be happy. I am anticipating, I've been in conversations, regular conversations with Danielle as we're looking at this end of the year. So I believe that we will be finishing the budget year with some kind of a surplus.
Okay.
She looked at it. I don't really want to go on record saying this. She looked at it, we were 2 million in the hole, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to figure out a country that doesn't provide extradition. But she had said that basically we were waiting on some of the final state aid transfers that are pending, so that we have not received them yet. So we will not be $2 million in the hole, but
That's great.
it's,
Well done.
it's like when she came down here, she was kind of in a panic, and then she came back, and I was trying to figure out a polite way to say, okay, well, maybe we need to look at some of their budget items. And then she said, oh, I found out what's going on. And so it's basically that there's some aid hanging out there that hasn't been fully transferred over to the districts yet.
Is there any allowable pre-purchasing that we could do if we find there's,
We're trying right now.
okay,
That's one of the things. That's why I've been kind of in regular conversations. We've been, if we know there's some software that we think will be used in the summer and then next year, we're trying to purchase those things now if we can.
What our insurance? Last year we were able to write the insurance check. Weren't we?
Yes.
Am I remembering
Yeah,
that wrong? Okay.
Property casualty, yes. Property casualty, yes. I'm waiting on a bid from our current
Okay.
provider, and if I don't get one soon, I'm going to gladly switch to another insurance provider. There could be some savings. I won't say considerable, but sizable potential savings if the current provider doesn't come in with a good offer.
Cover like a reading interventionist type savings.
We were all thinking it.
No. You want the short answer?
That's so sizable.
And remember, even a brand new staff member with insurance is gonna be 60.
Mhm. Any other comments on the budget, Mitch?
None.
No. It's good to hear that we're in a percentage of from last year and that we're anticipating a small surplus. I mean, that's kind of dreading the year where you're like, we're going to be about 500,000 in the hole this year. We're going to have to figure that out. I'm not waiting for that conversation, but that's really just good budgeting that we've been holding to
Well, I did jump online
our revenues.
for the utilities meeting the other day. Those of you that live in the city limits and received a mailing talking about a 60% increase water.
Mhm.
I did jump on and ask some questions around, it's difficult for everybody, but that would be a significant hit to the school district to the tune of well over $10,000 in additional utility payments if that goes through. So I did just for water. And I asked a follow-up question on, well, typically what goes with water comes the sewer, and then, well, we haven't had a rate increase. But my concern is if you look at your water bill at home, your sewer bill is tied to the amount of water that you're using. So it's like we do tend to use a lot of water, showers and dishes and all of the things that go along with cleaning. It seems only natural that our sewer fees are going to go up, and then most likely the city will probably be coming shortly after this increase with an increased cost for our increase in the sewer. I shared with them that the only way for the school district to get anything is that we have to go to referendum. I'm tied to taxpayer funding, and it's like, where do I find an additional 60% for my water bill at a time when I don't know what the state is doing as for financing and all those kinds of things. So it's just something to keep an eye on.
Okay. Anything else about the budget? Okay, we'll go to action items. First is the second reading.
And can I suggest?
Yeah.
Maybe we move number 6 to the top since George has been patiently waiting. Just because we have somebody here to present for it.
Oh,
So he doesn't have to sit through. I'm sure he's enamored with our conversation. But
So each one of you has a copy of a letter. This started with a conversation between a couple of the representatives from the Mineral Point Wrestling Club and Ms. Stahl as the athletic director, myself. George and Vicky, if you'd like to come forward, kind of talk about, they're going to move to that portion of the action items. The request was made to name a gym after longtime wrestling coach and FIAD teacher Scott Schmitz.
You want me to read this?
Why don't you go ahead, Vicky?
The wrestling club in the Mineral Point High School Athletic Department would like to make a request in naming the high school gym Scott Schmitz Gym. Coach Schmitz coached wrestling for 32 years. His teams compiled 480 plus wins, 9 conference championships, 17 regional championships, 11 sectional championships, 5 team state championships, 2 team state runner-up finishes, along with coaching 26 individual wrestling champions. Coach Schmitz was Wisconsin Wrestling Coaches Association Coach of the Year 6 times, the WWCA State Coach of the Year 3 times. He was also the National Federation of High School Sectional Coach of the Year in 2003. That was the last step. There was a pool of coaches being considered for the National Coach of the Year. He was inducted into the Allen E. Baldwin Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2009, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2013, and the George Martin Hall of Fame in 2016. Coach Schmitz was a long-time teacher coach for the Mineral Point School District starting in 1987 and retired as wrestling coach after the 2018-2019 season. He retired from teaching physical education at the end of the 2022-2023 school year. Gym was his physical education classroom, but Scott also initiated the Lifetime Fitness physical education program. The curriculum included archery, canoeing, golf, frisbee golf, pickleball, badminton, and weight training. Total years working for the district is 36 years. The wrestling club has made significant donations over the years, not just to our wrestling program, but to improve our district facilities as well. They have been able to fundraise to help the wrestling program purchase wrestling mats, uniforms, and equipment. They have made donations to improve our gyms, including the gym floor, the mat hoist, and the curtains. Wrestling Club and the Mineral Point High School Athletic Department appreciates the board consideration of naming the high school gym Scott Schmitz Gym. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take a motion in a second, and then we can have discussion and a vote. Although I would like to, before a motion, I'm sorry, I would like to make a suggestion. I want to talk to Vicki about this. I was thinking about, just for naming purposes, maybe calling it a community gym, it's Scott Schmitz Community Gym, since it's open to youth clubs. We have Christmas program. You know, it's something that we try to make open to the entire community, just to, as kind of a and as kind of a celebration of his contribution to the community as well, outside of the school district. Does that seem fair or unnecessary, or?
Fair to me, whenever you guys decide.
That was my one thought, if there was going to be a motion to, you know, to add that. You gonna make a motion? Sure, I can make a motion. I'll move that we name the high school gym Scott Schmitz Community Gym. I think for sake of discussion, I just wanted to, anytime you name something that's permanent, like you can't ever name it again, right? And sometimes that's the point, to enshrine someone, you know, permanently, but I just, you know, it's kind of a big deal when we do this. And so just wanted to pause and just reflect on that. But I mean, reflecting on what Coach Schmitz has given to the district and the community, I can't think of a more worthy person for the honor.
I am 100% right there with you. But what's giving me pause is I feel like in the last year, maybe two, we've now named the football stadium and the baseball diamond and now the gym. I just think we have literally 100+ years of history, and we've named 3 facilities after people in 36 months. And I think, all right, but that I don't want to take anything away from how amazing I think Scott is, and I'm going to support Coach Schmitz is, and I'm going to support this. But that's what's giving me like that just feels, I don't know how to explain it. Just giving me pause.
Meaning the softball field also got named in the last
You're right. Last few years.
That's not ours,
Not ours. Fair enough.
right? That it's, we don't control, that's not
Oh,
our
that's named.
facility,
Mhm.
really. It belongs to the city.
The thing that gave me pause, and I talked to Mitch and Vicky is, this is also a classroom in comparison to the other two facilities. And is there a precedent set by naming a classroom? As we've had a number of outstanding teachers in classrooms, I'm not honored with that. And a piece of this is the classroom. And if it was about the wrestling piece of it, I thought the wrestling room was more appropriate. So I do have pause with it as well because that's available, but with both of their support, I'm not outwardly against it. I just found the wrestling club or the wrestling room may be more appropriate, but less visible. So they both felt it was maybe more honoring to name the gymnasium. But I just have pause because it is, first and foremost, a classroom. So I don't
think about that.
Better than now. Yes.
You have a board policy that talks about it. There it is, while it's not 100% tied to financial contributions, those are one of the criterias. Is there a financial contribution made for the naming rights? The wrestling club certainly has donated a lot of money to the district. I believe the second one is someone who has had a positive influence on education, good moral character, has been a leader, has had distinguished service to the district. And the third one escapes me, but there are like 3 points. And one of the things in the policy does talk about the fact that if it is named, unless there was something discovered down the road that would warrant it, you won't name it again. It can't be the Scott Schmitz gym. Okay, 3 years from now we're going to name it Dan Burson gym. And then 2 years after that, it will be Vicky Dahl gym or something of that nature. Once it's named, unless there are really extenuating circumstances, the naming rights the naming of it does not disappear.
Mentions an ad hoc selection committee. Board policy. I'm not sure that it mentions it as something that's necessary, but a possible procedure that could be followed in terms of naming.
India, I think you bring up a good point that the gym is a classroom to everyone and has, and this seems, this is very like wrestling focused. And as the gym is an open classroom to everyone. I like the idea of naming the wrestling room. Not taking away any of the accolades that Scott Schmidt has given to school and all the, not taking away any of the work that he has done in the past 36 years. For both the wrestling and the physical education program.
Board policy states that the criteria that may be considered, so not must be considered, is that may be named after a geographic location and or a section of the district it serves. If a facility is named after a person, that person shall be of exemplary moral character, have made an outstanding contribution to education, humanity, or community, or have displayed outstanding leadership, or be a person of historical significance. Facilities may also be named after major contributors to the school district, without whom new facilities would not have been possible. It says it says a facilities naming committee may be appointed by the board president. So it doesn't say that that's required or necessarily need to be done. And then if that committee is appointed, then there's a separate addendum to the policy that talks about how the selection committee could be formed and who would be serving on it, and talks about guidelines. So, Andy, just talk me through. I hear what you're saying about setting a precedent for classrooms. I guess I don't see too big of an issue moving forward if we felt like there was an urge or desire or request to name a different classroom after either a past teacher or deceased teacher who, or an active teacher, that recently retired. I see the point in maybe this is not acknowledging maybe past great teachers that were loyal to the district and served the district in a significant way, but I guess I don't have a huge problem in the future if we were to name a science classroom after a certain teacher or something like that. But help me understand.
It just, like I said, it's not a major issue. It just brought me
Sure.
pause that is it going to create, what is a waterfall of, my grandpa taught for 40 years and all I had to do was write a certain check to get part of the school named after him. Just things of that nature. And in the world we live in 2023, they just provide me some pause in naming a classroom in a school.
I think I also want to be clear that you don't have to give money to request naming rights. Like this specific naming rights has not been bought by any significant person or group. The request.
I know. That was my understanding of the policy. I didn't read it. I know that the prior two groups did provide significant, and the wrestling club has.
Right.
And one of the groups was told they needed to, so that's what I understood the policy to be. Maybe it's not.
It makes sense for me, if you're going to provide signage or pay for signage, that maybe funds could be donated to just put up the signage or paint the names on the gym floor or whatever. That makes some sense.
I guess to that point, it would provide me greater pause to start naming classrooms if nothing's required other than good service and being of good moral character and being a good teacher. Then we're starting a tremendous precedent.
The only reference to financial contributions in the board policy is facilities may also be named after major contributors to the school district without whom new facilities would not have been possible. So in my mind, I'm thinking more like, a major donor to build something new.
Right.
Like paid for the football stadium or paid for a new wrestling room or paid for
Right.
the new elementary school gym or something like that.
Yeah, I just misunderstood what the policy said.
And maybe it's been interpreted in different ways in the past. But, we have a lot of classrooms in school. And if someone requests the classroom to be named, we don't have to approve it, but I think if it means a lot to a large group of people to name a classroom, right? I would certainly hear the request.
What else have we named in the past few years?
Baseball field and the football field.
Oh, we named the baseball field after a former athletic director and longtime teacher, right? Teacher coach, not 80.
Principal. Oh,
Principal.
Okay. And then we named football field after a longtime physical education teacher and football coach. And now we're considering naming the gym after a longtime wrestling coach and physical education teacher. In a town that has these are all sporting facilities. Okay, never mind. My point is just noticing a theme, but they are sporting venues, so that does make sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, external processing.
And again, I'm not strongly opposed. I just wanted to, I mean, if there's anybody he's in the National Hall of Fame. So, I mean, he's significantly worthy of something. I just at least wanted to pause and decide whether that should be the gym or the wrestling room.
I mean, to Christy, to your point, I feel more strongly about coach's contribution as a longtime PE teacher for the school rather than a wrestling coach. Because then, you think about all the sports that have occurred in that space in addition to wrestling, and I think someone could make an argument, why don't we name it after our greatest basketball coach or, our state champion girls basketball coaches, or, a longtime volleyball coach, something like that. I mean, I could see concerns about that, but I think, what makes coach stand out is his dedication to the kids and not just certain kids, but every kid has to take PE. So
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm just
I'm not
talking
arguing
about
that. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, he's touched all the kids that have come through those halls rather than just one team of certain athletes, which to me carries a lot of significance for a space that's for all kids, Anyone else want to make a comment or a question before we vote on it? EJ forgot who seconded the motion. Okay. Go ahead and call the question.
You made the motion, so we're you done.
Okay. I'll vote yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Constant,
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Sure.
I
Do you have a reason why you're abstaining?
I just don't know enough about process. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, you can.
Bush,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
That's the Schmitz Community Gym.
Yeah.
That's just me, Jen. Yeah.
Do you think that'll be acceptable to the wrestling club, Georgia, that it's the Scott Schmitz Community Gym?
Thank you also very much.
Thank you for your support. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
for the request.
Yep.
And I appreciate that.
Thanks, George.
Okay, so that was number 6. We'll go back up to number 1. which is second reading and approval of Rule 458.
Last month, we shared the changes recommended by the DPI for their approval. As long as we had it on our agenda, they would sign off with those minor editorial changes to our Rule 458. I would recommend passage.
Make a motion, we approve.
A second.
Motion Heisner. Any comments? I don't recall there being a whole lot of question or debate on this in first reading.
No.
Anybody have any comments or no question? Please, Angie?
Bush,
Yes.
Hazel,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Building.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Next is approval of short-term borrowing district.
When I sent my update out on Friday, I did not have the second proposal. At the time I sent my email out, it came in late afternoon. So you have a stapled copy of the two proposals. There is almost a full percentage point difference between the two proposals and what the interest rate charge to the district would be for any short-term borrowing. So I would recommend that we use the financial institution that has a lower interest rate, which is Mound City, or not, sorry, Farmers Savings Bank. Farmers Savings Bank has a lower interest rate.
I move that we accept the proposal from Farmer Savings.
Second.
And just for clarity, I mean, we typically spend this money over a couple months to get us through a certain time period, and then we're reimbursed
Whenever
really
we,
quickly, right? Once the first state aid payment comes in or something like that.
our typical history is we will use a portion of the funds to offset whether we're paying bills or making payroll. And then once we get state aid or reimbursed from our taxes based in municipalities, once that money gets back, typically then we turn around and pay off whatever money we have borrowed on that line of credit. So it basically keeps the amount of interest we're paying to a pretty low number, but it's because of cash flow from the state and from all those other locations. It only comes at certain times. So we need something of this nature. And quite honestly, most school districts have something like this in place so that they can offset and protect their employees and their businesses basically during the time of limited cash flow.
I guess that was the point I was looking for, was that the total interest obligation is fairly low because of the amount used and the amount of time to pay it back.
Right. The length we hold that borrowing is pretty short. Yeah, I would say probably no more than 2 months.
Any additional comments or questions about motion? It was 1.5 last year, wasn't it? The amount, 1.5 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, the dollar amount has been the same for several years.
Yeah. Great vote.
Heisner,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
And it's a locked-in rate, right?
Correct. Yep, correct.
Next is approval of school fee schedule for coming school year.
So in the board packet, and I alluded to this in my update. The DPI comes in like school lunches and says, okay, there's a ratio that you have to be, and I don't have exact number, the ratio, but what they're providing for reimbursement for a lunch we're charging has to be within that certain percentage. We are not, we need to add 10 cents to our lunches, what we charge for lunches. So elementary, middle school, high school, and adult lunches need to go up by 10 cents in order for us to stay within that, in that right ratio between reimbursements and what we're charging. So you see on there an increase to $3.05 for K through 5 students, $3.40 for 6-12 students, and $4.75 for adult lunches. There are 3 other changes listed there. If you have that sheet in front of you, you see there is a materials fee for K-5 elementary, and then there's a separate school activity pass. The recommendation coming forward is to pull that school activity pass out of the materials fees for middle school students and for high school students. Before, it was all rolled into one payment. Now the request before you is to pull that out as a separate fee. So if I have a middle school student, I'm going to write a check for $30 for fees and usage and those kinds of things. If I want my student to be able to go to every home activity, as long as it's not a tournament event, I would write another check for $25 to cover all of the home activities.
So last year was the 6th through 8th grade fees 55 then?
No.
So
They
we're
weren't.
charging an additional 25 is what
Correct.
we're saying.
Yeah. So basically the purpose is to separate it out and make it similar to what the elementary students go through. And then the last piece is a media class fee. You'll see there's a band fee. There are shop fees for some of our tech ed programs and courses for materials used. The media class is growing and the supplies and the equipment needs are growing. So there's a request being made to charge a $20 fee for the media classes.
The media classes or just the media for all of the classes that students are in?
It would be for the media class, so it'd be 20 if I'm in media 1, it would be 20 if I'm in media 2. Instead of I'm in 2 or 3 media classes and I'm only paying $20. It's $20 per
class
class.
per semester.
Yes.
Do we feel that inhibits or prohibits any students from participating? And if so, do we just waive it?
And for
Yeah, I don't-
all the, like,
Yeah.
school activity path.
That's for the free and reduced lunch. Are the fees waived or is it discounted or is it individualized?
The tricky point is it depends on the parents. We encourage our families, if they qualify, to fill out the paperwork for free and reduced lunch. And on there is a little checkbox that says you may share this with other entities within the school. If the parents do not share that, they qualify for free and reduced lunch. If they check that, then there are things that we can use for sports fees, media fees, shop fees, those kinds of things. That allows us that flexibility to say, okay, this is what we're doing for the family.
Okay, so you have to be aware that they have to
to
share that information. with
Yes,
the people
they have to
collecting
tell
the
us that
fees.
they're willing to do that.
They educated, that's what that box means.
We do the best that we can, yes.
Without-
Because that's what we say on there. If you allow us to share this information, it will help us waive fees. Thing. Not just like everybody's gonna know. Okay.
Correct.
How much additional revenue do we anticipate these changes will drive? A couple thousand?
Potentially.
It's just to cover increases in costs.
The ticketing fees for adults coming into our home games is going up conference-wide this next year. Is that correct, Ms. Stahl? Did I hear that right? So we have not done anything student impact wise. If they go to another school district, their activity pass doesn't work there like it does here, but yeah, the ticket prices are going up for all conference events. So this just kind of helps us recoup some of that from our own students here.
The school activity pass funds, they go into the athletic department budget? No,
General fund,
general fund. Okay,
just like the tickets at the door go into the general fund.
okay.
How do we administer that if student photos and student IDs aren't issued until I think now we're a month into school? Like, we just take them at their word for all the home football games?
There's a list that's printed
Okay,
for each level.
it's minor,
It's
getting into the details. Sorry, scratch that.
it's not a really tight operation in my experience, but I think they try.
Getting in the weeds. Get me back on
He just
track.
flashes his board president badge and they let him in without making him pay.
You got a badge?
All right, so I'll take a motion to approve the school fee schedule
I'll make a
for next year.
motion to approve the school fee schedule. 2024.
Johnston Bergstrom. Any other comments?
Olmstead,
Yes.
Gelding.
Yes.
Bergstrom. Yes. Bush,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
and Doug.
Yes, thank you. That's the amendments.
Hopefully this all came through in the summary. There were 2 tabs on potential budget amendments. This is not, I gotta make sure I say this right. One of the tabs is expenses. That's not new money. That was money that was budgeted in one expense area that was not necessarily needed and is moved to a different budget expense area. And if you look, it amounts to $54,263. That's what we're taking out, and we're putting in $54,263 into other expense accounts that we know we needed those. If you look on one of those, there's middle school custodian. Partway through the year, we had resignation. We were unable to fill the position, but we had budgeted that money. So that was one of the accounts we were using then to cover, as you see, gas, electric, water. Those rates came in a little higher. So that's what we're doing, is we're making sure that money that we had in their budget is being expended in another area that we know we have. And because this is the board's budget, the auditors need to see that you are aware of those changes and would ask for that approval. The second tab has a revenue and expense. So the revenue was common school funds. We always get this at the end of the year. This is one of those things that I love when the state comes in and says, here's your money. And then your auditors are saying, well, you have to spend this money before the end of your fiscal year. So it creates some mass confusion in the business office, but basically common school funds and then the Get Kids Ahead grant came in as revenue. And in the budget amendments, we're showing it as revenue on the top. So that's why it's a 10R for revenue. That was $77,354. And then the expenses show where all of that money was going. 99.9% of that was going, or I should say 99.9% of the accounts it's going to are also common school funds accounts. That is material that needs to be purchased by the library for the library. It might be something that could be checked out, but it's not like common school funds can't be used to pay for an additional reading interventionist. That money is not allowed to be spent that way. And the Get Kids Ahead grant money is used for positions around that support that grant.
I'll take a motion to approve these budget amendments.
And seconded.
Building management. Questions or comment?
I have a question about the 54,212 on that bottom line, when it comes in as revenue and it comes out. What is that? Is that a salary of the grant?
The 54,000,
54,000.
the 64,212 is a grant that we got from the state. We got it a year ago, and then all of a sudden it was, hey, surprise, you're going to get it again. So that is the revenue, and it is used for some curriculum. It's used for a staff member
Right,
who's,
so there's salary in that.
yes.
Really surprised.
It is, and we're hoping that we get it again.
Any other comments or questions? Any amendments?
Yeah, okay, sorry. Didn't need to ask that question.
Everyone got to hear it because I'm sure a lot of people online were wondering. Okay, Andrew.
It's a good question.
Belding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. January budget.
I'm asking for you to approve a preliminary budget without a whole lot of information yet from Madison, but the purpose and the portion of the budget I'm asking for preliminary approval is for the purchases that we would need to make to be prepared for the start of school. It will not impact salaries and benefits. It will not impact anything else. It'll be what items that have been requested that I've asked all building administrators to get a priority list as to what items need to be ordered so that you have them in your classroom by September 5th. And that's in essence what I'm asking permission to do, is that, you know, we had a preliminary budget discussion where you're at a deficit right now. I don't have a whole lot of clarity. I've heard some things out of Madison that there isn't a tentative agreement. But I don't have a whole lot of clarity as to the complete dollar amount that might mean for each school. I've heard of $325 per pupil. I've heard a whopping 3.3% increase in special ed funding. But then there was another dollar amount thrown out, but nothing specific on a per pupil increase. So I don't have a complete dollar amount as to here's what I'm expecting for us in funding. There was some things for mental health that might be just renewing the Get Kids Ahead grant, which was $64,000. You know, that might help offset some other expenditures in some places. So instead of using Fund 10 money, would be able to use that grant money towards. But my request is approval of a budget that allows us to make purchases that are necessary for the start of school.
Are those purchases in line with previous years?
Correct. They are. Yes. Yeah. Our basic increase, you know, is looking at, when I looked at what the building level budgets were, they're almost
They're flat.
from year to year. So I feel good about that part.
In other words, you're looking for approval for kind of a rough draft of a budget for next year that's preliminary.
Correct.
That's non-committal on salaries and benefits and CPI, which we'll probably decide on in the next month or two, depending on what information we get.
Correct.
And then the budget is finalized in October, when we certify it.
That is correct. Yes.
There will be no longer a rough budget.
Correct.
Take a motion to approve it.
Make a motion to approve. Question. So if the joint finance committee votes on whatever they talked about today, and they said they're gonna vote on it tomorrow, then it goes to Governor Evers.
Mhm.
Say he approves it, how long does it usually take to get something crystallized for you.
I would probably say. I would say certainly before the July board meeting, because there'll be people that'll be dissecting it out, saying this is what you can count on. You can count on 325 per pupil in this. You can count on 3% more in special ed funding, and you can count on another $50 per pupil on revenue limit or something of that nature. There'll be experts in Madison that'll report that out. That would give me a much better budget picture. So hopefully by the July board meeting.
An increase in revenue limits means that the taxes that are assessed in calendar 2024, right? We're in 2020, in 2024, would increase, we would be able to collect more, right? So we don't get to use that for the 23-24 budget, do we? That's a full year out?
No,
Or we can use them?
Yeah.
And then we've got that line of credit to use until they come in?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to be clear for transparency, the first check in July for all staff will likely be identical to the last check in June.
Until the board determines, until the board votes and determines what kind of a salary increase we can afford to give, the pay will be identical to what it has been this past school year.
And then we true up. So if we're able to give an increase, if we're a pay period or two in, we
would give back pay. We would give a
Back
one
pay.
check
Okay.
as back pay. So if it was a 4%, depending on how many pay periods go through before we have that CPI number figured out, they would take that and, okay, what is the difference in each of those checks? If it's 2 checks, 4 checks, and then in one check, they would give that back. And every check moving forward would be the current 23-24 school year amount.
As finance chair, do you have any concerns about us approving this preliminary budget? Who seconded your motion? Okay.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Eisner,
yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to business services. Credit card statement of activity and bills payable. I'll take a motion to approve them together or separately.
I'll make a motion we approve all together.
Bush Bergstrom. Any discussion?
I was really looking forward to drilling Mr. Austin on what alien tape was, but he's not here, so I guess I'll just have to assume it's something we needed.
The puzzle pieces that were stuck to the wall, like the seniors' plans, that's what they were. That's how
It's
they were.
called alien tape.
That's a brand. It's alien tape. It's like a double-sided, super sticky tape. So that's what was used to.
I think we should call him right now.
It looks almost like clear duct tape, but it's tacky on both sides and reusable. And
So just for clarity's sake, we've been getting weekly updates on bills payable via email from Danielle, from a business manager. Has that been going well for everybody? It feels like that's been a good process and the timing and everything.
I have a question about like, if you reply all, I don't think you reply all with a question, is that, do you not do that?
Correct, you're not supposed
Yeah.
to reply all.
Yeah, so, but I think the way it works best is you reply directly to Danielle. And then she replies, and you.
That's what I thought, like.
yes,
that's
yeah,
what I'm-
to Danielle and I, please send your question to both of us.
Okay. And then one of you usually responds to the whole board with the answer to your question.
Okay.
That we
That
know you
makes
asked it.
I didn't ask it in a walking forum, I said.
It just stops us from having a reply all conversation.
Yeah.
The reply all itself would not be against
So it would.
the rules because your question is included and sent to everybody anyway. It just stops,
Just after the fact.
it stops us from having 3 comments
Spiral.
to everybody, which turns into a,
Amongst the board about a topic that should be on the agenda.
We certainly would never spiral into that. Not us.
No.
Okay, any other questions, concerns?
No, I appreciate them sending that. Oh, that's been very helpful.
Good. We'll pass it along.
Angie, what's call the question?
Bush,
yes,
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Gelting.
Yes.
Birch. Dunn.
You did. You
Oh, I
put me
got it
second or
out of
something,
order,
but I was
sorry.
happy to go whenever you call my name.
Sorry.
So next is employee services.
I think we can do number 1 right away.
Just approve the designations and retirements.
Yes.
And then, we'll table the new hires until after closed session.
make a motion, we approve all 4 resignations and thank all of them for their service to the district.
I'll second.
There was technically 3 resignations.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll echo Andy's comments. Anyone have one on anything or questions? Okay, go ahead, Angie.
And to be,
Oh, sorry.
just to be clear, that does include the posting of the,
My second stands.
Thank you.
So we're approving resignation, retirements of 4 positions and posting to replace all 4.
Bush,
yes,
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Gelting,
Yes.
Bergstrom. Yes. Dunn.
Yes. Okay, I'll take a motion to table the new hires until after closed session.
I'll second.
Oh,
Let's get her in the minutes. Get her in the minutes.
I should let Angie call it now.
Was there just like integrity?
For it.
We need to get her in the paper a little more. She can have as many as she wants.
Okay. All in favor of tabling the hires, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. So I'll take a motion to go into closed session to review the new hires and address any concerns, specific concerns that there might be.
Move into closed session.
Thanks. It's building Bergstrom again. Okay, we can do a roll call.
Gelting,
Yes.
Bergstrom.
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay, thank you for joining online.
Thank you, everyone.